Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to the Spiritual Unity Radio Network, a station dedicated to the concept that all manifestations of the divine are equally valid. Join Reverend Terry Power HP, Robin McKean, and all the hosts for programming covering a wide range of spiritual topics, right here on Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to an emerging forest, a safe place where we have the freedom to think about life without judgment. We take a look at society, we examine it, and we allow for the possibility of something new, something different. And now, here's your host, Alan Ritter.
Well, welcome everybody to this 19th of November 2017 show of an emerging forest. And we have a really interesting show tonight. Through Alexandra, who you met a few shows ago, who is the curator of Plays and Players Art Gallery within the Plays and Players Theater at 1714 Delancey in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I went to the closing of a previous exhibition and met several of the artists there. And one of them is on the show tonight, and her name is Wendy Wagner. And also on the show tonight is David Whitman. Hi, David. How are you?
I'm doing well, Alan. How are you tonight?
Really good. Hi, Wendy. How are you? Welcome to the show.
Hi, Alan. Thanks for having me. Hi, David.
Hi. How are you, Wendy?
I'm doing well. Thanks.
Great to hear.
So basically, this is Wendy's show, and David and I are here to sort of make it like there's a room of people talking with Wendy. But so, what drives you to do what you do is sort of the goal, and sort of how you do it and things like that, or the goal of trying to sum that up in the hour. But I think we'll take a little journey and start where you started, or start with your inspiration and then the path that you took to pick up your the tools that you have in your toolkit. So why don't you go back in time and take us through your artistic adventure?
Okay. Well, I consider myself a contemporary realist. I paint mainly from life, actually all from life. And I prefer alla prima portraits. They are portraits that are done in one sitting, but I also do some still life too. But I really enjoy painting people because I like the interaction that you get. The two people, you're there at that moment in time, and I'm recording what I see, and I'm hopefully capturing an essence of my sitter. So that's probably my favorite love. And I also feel like, we all have our stories. We all have our gifts that we bring into the world. And hopefully I can find the beauty in the person that I'm painting. So that's kind of what I'm doing right now. Starting out, I went to Catholic school, so we really didn't have an art program at all. It was almost an afterthought. So through high school, I really didn't have a good foundation or a good direction with art. I mean, I always liked it, and I took the art classes, and I drew, and I did stuff, but I didn't have a strong basis that I wish I had. And I actually, right after high school, I moved to California to go to school for fashion design. And I spent one semester there, and I learned quickly that that was not the path for me. I actually hated the whole sewing thing, but I loved the drawing part. So I enrolled in some drawing classes, and then I came back here, and I applied to Moore College of Art, which is where I ended up going for my BFA. So anyway, that was like my early foray into art school.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I learned about at Moore, like they were really good with learning process and the act of painting, and I think regular art schools are really good at that. They make you think about why you create and what is it that you want to express, but they're not as heavy on the technical side of it, and so it was a good experience at the time, but you know, you have your senior show, and then you're kind of out into the world. And I didn't know what to do after that. You know, I had this painting degree, and I just didn't know what to do. I had a lot of loans to pay off, and I was a commuter student. So there's really no vehicle to teach you what to do after that. And so I kind of came back to New Jersey. Well, that's where I lived. And I worked here to pay off my loans. And then I kind of got out of painting. I had switched to clay for a little bit.
If I can interject, well, you're saying that the art school taught you how to quote unquote put a brush in your hand and to paint, but didn't teach you how to do the other things that are necessary to make a living as an artist? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, it's like I find that a lot of, and I know this isn't just my experience, I've heard this from other artists who have been through either a regular bachelor's program or a atelier program, but when you're going through a regular art school, and I'm not trying to put it down, but when you're going through it, you know, they're really big on, you know, what is it that you want to express, and, you know, they want you to try a lot of different things and different mediums, and all that's great because you don't know. Like, what did I know?
Right.
I just knew I liked art, so I had no idea which way I wanted to go. I know I liked painting figures, and that was all my work at the time. And it wasn't quite as popular then, and this is before the Internet. So really the only way you knew to get your art out there was to go to galleries and show them slides of your work or what you learned through magazines. So I kind of didn't stay around and have that community, and I just kind of didn't know how to promote myself, or, you know, I didn't know what to do. You know, I did paint and stuff at home for a while, but I didn't know how to carry that forward any further. And I guess at the time, like looking back, maybe because, I don't know, the world wasn't amazed by my one senior show, I kind of internalized that as maybe I'm not creative enough.
Right.
So I switched to clay. I had tried some clay classes in college, and I really enjoyed that. I liked the tactile quality of it. And so I got in a potter's wheel, and I worked with pottery for a bit, and I thought at the time, you know, well, this is something I could sell and make a living at. But I didn't think that no matter what medium I used, it still takes a long time to practice to get good at it. You know, you got to acquire that skill. So then, you know, I got married, I had kids, and I just stopped doing art. But, you know, I found that the desire doesn't leave you. You know, like my kids had killer parties. You know, they were very creative, and I did, you know, murals for a little bit and did different displays and signs and things like that. But I found that these were different ways I was trying to be artistic without doing what I really wanted to do.
Wendy, I'd like to hear more about the desire of your art, and the desire that stayed with you even during a period when you didn't necessarily involve with art. What was that like, or what was it that brought you back to art?
It's funny because I don't, looking back, like, I don't know why I didn't keep a sketchbook all those years. Like, during that time, why didn't I just have a book just for me that no one had to see? But I didn't do that. It's like this weird paralysis that you get. And it's like you want to do it. And I remember somebody asked me one time to just like whip up a drawing. And I was like, well, I need to see it. I can't just make it up out of my head. I need to see it to do it well. And I kind of thought, well, maybe I'm just a copyist. Maybe I'm not creative enough to be a real artist. I can copy something, but is that, I'm not reinventing the wheel. I'm not making something totally different. So is that art? And it took a while for me to figure out how to, it seemed like everything happened at once. So what I learned was once you open yourself up to things, they start to come your way. And so there was a change at one point where, it's a school. There was an opening for a long-term substitute art teacher, and like I knew people who were teachers, and they're like, "Why don't you apply for that?" And I was like, "No, I can't do that." And then I thought, well, why don't I apply? I get, all these people are telling me maybe I can, even though I have the degree. And so I did apply, and I didn't get it. But then I did end up getting a position teaching at a local gallery, and it was a smaller class, and it was more in line with what I wanted to do because I had the freedom to teach however I wanted. And then also around that time, like my niece had told me about that Ira Glass quote about the gap. I don't know, are you familiar with that one at all?
But tell us more about that.
Yeah, okay. So anyway, my niece had sent me this quote, and he says, and I have it right here, so I'll read it. Nobody tells this to people who are beginners, and I wish someone had told me. All of us who do this creative work, we get into it because we have good taste, but there is this gap. And for the first couple of years, you make stuff, and it's not just that good. It's trying to be good, it has potential, but it's not. But it's your taste, the thing that got you into the game, is still killer, and your taste is why your work disappoints you. And a lot of people never get past this phase. They quit. Most people I know who do interesting creative work went through years of this. We know our work doesn't have this special thing that we want it to have, and we all go through this. And if you're just starting out or you're still in this phase, you just got to know that it's normal, and the most important thing you can do is a lot of work. Put yourself on a deadline so that every week you'll finish one story. It's only by going through a volume of work that you will close that gap, and your work will be as good as your ambitions. And I took longer to figure that out than anyone else I've ever met. It's going to take a while, and it's normal, but you got to fight your way through. So I heard that, and for some reason it just really resonated with me. And I thought, you know what? I didn't push through. So between the teaching and then I heard the quote, and I started doing more of my own work. And that's when I came across this atelier called Studio Incominati, which is in Philly. And I went on the website and I looked at the work and I was really impressed. And part of me thought, gee, why didn't I learn that way? But like I said, my previous emphasis was on being unique, self-expression, and I didn't feel like that maybe I was unique enough. But then I found this world of people who draw and paint from life, and they made beautiful, amazing work, and you could see that it was all personal. So anyway, I ended up enrolling, and I was a full-time student, which I just graduated in June, and I received a fellowship to study there for one more year. And I helped teach a class there of beginner students, and it's just things have turned around ever since then.
What did that feel like to have that accomplishment?
It's interesting because it seems like I noticed you get confidence through competence. So, when I went there, everybody was really nice, but they were teaching you skills. They weren't just nice to be nice, but they kind of had a direct method to do things. And when you learn the method, your work gets better. And then it's like, oh, well, that's how you learn. You're supposed to fail. You're supposed to try and fail and make a ton of horrible drawings and then they get better. And it's not that you can't do it or you're not good enough to do it. It just means, that's the learning phase that you're in. So it's funny, the experience I had in the first phase of my art career, when I was in school, I painted figures, and I remember having a critique, and one teacher said to me, looking at my work, and he's like, your color looks muddy. You got to work on that. So I spent a whole semester doing what I thought was cleaning up my color. And then I had a critique at the end of the next semester, and that same teacher said to me, you used to have this interesting color sense, and you seem to have lost it. So I kind of took that as, I can't really do color well. And so my first workshop at Incombinati was color study. And I thought, I'll try it out, see what it is. And it was a whole new world opened up. And the funny thing is now, one of the things I really like with painting is color. I learned that, it's color relationships, and it's, capturing the light effect and how the colors all relate under certain light conditions. And none of this stuff was really explained to me at the time, my first foray. So anyway, it just was interesting that the one thing that I held for a while thinking that's something I can't do actually turned out to be, I think, is a strength right now. So I don't know. It's just something I gravitate towards.
It comes out really well in the gap painting. You have this great blue as the background to your figure, and then the green contrasted with the blue. The red, your hair color, the reddish brown, and then the light brown of the drawers. The color is very. You can tell that the color is. You really understand the dynamics of color.
Thank you. Now that painting came about. I was doing a series of paintings where I would do a portrait of someone, and then I did a companion still life that went with it. And my idea was to have symbolic items in the still life that would tell about the person. So, you would just see a still life, but I would know what it represented. And then as I was working on these, I was actually painting family members. They were free models. I thought, fine, I'll do my family. And, I found challenges with painting people painting people who are not art models. And so I thought, I'm going to do a still life. I'm going to do a self-portrait. So for me, I decided to combine the still life with the self-portrait, which is what that painting ended up being. It's not something that I ever considered or thought about in advance. It just kind of evolved. So actually all the elements in it are really symbolic. Green was the color of hope, and I intended to have it being me revealing it. I was thinking about different aspects of my life or anybody's life and how we have different phases that we go through. You have your phase in high school, and then your phase in college, and then after college, and then when you get married and have kids, and you're a different person at all these phases. And then the items that are in those drawers, obviously the art supplies represent the artistic part. The bottom drawer had the wings with feathers, and that was to represent time. And then the other one had a deer antler, and the stag is to represent fear because it's an animal that runs away in fear. So anyway, I was trying to incorporate these different aspects of the journey that I had into this one painting. And I don't know, obviously nobody would get all that by looking at it, but for me, that was how I could figure out how to work it all together.
Are the keys around your neck?
Yes, so a key symbolizes the secrets that we all keep. So I thought that's interesting because we all have a secret side. There's a side that we all have that we don't share with people. And then the indigo, which was the color of the fabric in the background, that was to be more like spiritual or kind of on that path. So.
And here you are on the Spiritual Unity Radio Network. How about that?
I know, right? I know. So, see, it's just how things work out.
I want to take a journey, a spiritual journey. Well, in general, I sort of have to look at life as that journey.
Yeah.
And so is the show that I saw at the Plays and Players Theater the only one you've had, or have you had other shows?
No, I've done other shows. I've done some in Naples, Florida, and then through Incominati we have shows every year. We work with the Philadelphia Youth Orchestra and do a show through them. So, and that's the one part about the school that I really like, that I have to say has been really helpful. When you're going through the program and you're a second and third year student, they do incorporate you in the shows that they have with the alumni and the teachers. So, you're taught, how does a painting need to be framed? How does it need to be prepared to be hung? How do you present it? You're taught, you go to openings and you're interacting with people, you're representative of the school. So these are all kind of the skills that I feel like have helped me get to where I am now. It's helped me to understand, this is how an artist does things. Where before it was like, senior show and you're done. Like, good luck. There you go. I have my website now.
So Studio and Cominante was sort of, I have this BFA, but there was a part of the BFA curriculum which at that point was absent but is present with the studio.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, it's been it's amazing, and I have to say it's just one of those journeys where you just never know where life's going to take you. I feel like even the last 5 years, that's something I've really learned. When I think of how I even got here, I was teaching, and then I met this person, and then they introduced me to this person who took me to this level. And then, it's just like, just when I needed it, it seemed like I would either meet someone or a circumstance would come through, and it would just take me to the next level. And then I think of the times, like early on when someone suggested I apply for that teaching position, and I was like, no. And then it hit me, well, people are telling me maybe I should do this. And then I started thinking, gosh, how many times in life do we think we don't have opportunities, but we really do, but we discount them. They come our way, and we just kind of blow them off and shoot them down instead of taking them. So now I don't look at things that way. Now I try to be completely open and, just treat new experiences as they are, and you just never know. Some of the greatest teachers I've had have come from very unlikely sources, people I just never expected to learn from. And that's what's so exciting, I guess, about life, right?
It's very true. There are subtleties to how things are, and if we're not attuned or tuned, we if our dial is too far to self-criticism or too far to our own limiting beliefs, we miss the transmission. Signal's fuzzy instead of clear. Yeah,
and I listened to your broadcast last week when David was talking about stories we tell ourselves. And that's totally true. You get caught up in this story that you tell yourself, I can't do this, or, I don't have this resource, or, that's not true. If there's a will, there's a way. And I'm not blaming the school I went to earlier. It's not anything they had done. I'm responsible for the decisions I made at the time and the choices I made. And I just didn't know. I didn't know how to proceed or how to take myself to the next level. And, of course, now it's a lot easier, with Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
And but, people just really limit themselves. We're so much more capable than we give ourselves credit for. And I noticed that with teaching, I co-teach this class of beginner students, and they are from a organization called Project Home. So they're people who've transitioned from homelessness. And, this group has already come from adversity, and they come to this art class. And a lot of it is trying to get them to realize that they are capable and they have it within them. I like to compare it to music. you wouldn't hand someone a cello and expect them to pick it up and play in a symphony. Yet people are so quick to say, I can't draw. Like, people say it all the time. Oh, you're an artist? Oh, I can't draw. And I'm like, really? Have you tried? Oh, no, I can't draw a stick figure, people will say. And it's like, yeah, but there's a way to be taught. There's a way to be taught to see.
I think it would be great to have an art show featuring the homeless.
Yes. Well, we have had some. They've had some at the school. Yes. And it's amazing that what these people have, these artists have started out. Some have had some art background and some haven't. And how far they come along, it's really, really impressive. It's really inspiring.
From your experience, would you say that many of the homeless are really creative? It's always seemed to me that the creative types are the ones that are sort of cast aside by society. The ones that want to, that live that dream that I'm going to be a musician, I'm going to be an artist, I'm going against the grain of the production-based society. And perhaps a lot of those people that wind up homeless are truly these creative types that just they don't want to be part of the cookie cutter. They want to follow their own brain, and that they got some bad deals along the way, and their creativity got stifled, and perhaps this is a way to reawaken it.
Yeah, I don't know. I wonder if it's like most people where we, creative people are sensitive, so maybe they tend to internalize. Like I know I do. I probably tend to internalize things, and just again, we don't give ourselves credit for what we can really do. I'll say this to my kids, or other artists will talk about stuff, and it's like, for instance, I'll have like I don't know, if one of my kids will ask me something or say, oh, I don't know if I can't do this or whatever, and I'll be like, quit because it's something you don't want to do. If you really don't have your heart in it, then fine, don't do it. But if it's just hard, don't give up. Just don't give up, because you're going to regret it. I think of the times where I kind of wished I still did stuff and I didn't at the time. Now, along the way, in between when I started teaching and started drawing again, one of the things that did help is I came across David Lynch's book, Catching the Big Fish, and he talks about how transcendental meditation helps his creativity. So I did learn how to do that. And I do find that when I have a regular practice, I'm much calmer, I make better decisions, I sleep better. There's a lot of benefits to it that I found. But, it's just interesting how, again, the ball started rolling and then it kept going. And I don't know. I just think we are more capable than we realize for...
More along the lines maybe of... the other part of last week's show was sort of, okay, one part of it is we're limited by the stories we tell each other or we tell ourselves about ourselves. But then there was the part where I was saying, well, that's part of the process of getting out of the room that you're in, is you're really just right next to the door, and you have to negotiate opening the door and getting into the next room. And really, depending on the process, you were probably in that room for a very long time, and literally opening the door and getting into the next room is something that is going to take time. And in your case, you saw the amount of time, and the other adventure, you got done with your BFA, and shortly thereafter stopped, quote-unquote, doing art for your main thing, and then took X number of years off, had a family life, and now the wheel turned and you're back at the door, standing with, maybe 2 feet on the other side of the door.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that.
With that little bit of information or whatever it was from me. Boy, I'm having a good night tonight. I'd like to play a song and go into our break, and the song is Darb the Bard, Howland Toe.
Take no scorn to wear the horn. It was the crest when you were born. Your father wore it, and your father wore it too. Highland Toe, Johnny Rumbelow, we were up long before the day to welcome in the summertime, welcome in the Mayo, for summer is a-coming in, and winter's gone away. Robin Hood and Little John have both gone to the fair, and we shall to the merry greenwood to hunt the bark and hare. Oh, Highland Toe, Jolly Rumbelow, we were up long before the day to welcome in the summertime, welcome in the Mayo, for summer is a-coming in and winter's gone away. What happened to the Spaniard? The mates so brave, the boast, oh, that they shall eat the feather goose, we shall eat the roast, oh, Highland Toe, Johnny Rumbelow, we were up long before the day to welcome in the summertime, welcome in the Mayo, for summer is a-coming in and winter's gone away.
Tune in to International Pagan Radio. You can hear your favorite artists such as Dave the Bard, Tuatha Dea, Spiral Rhythm, S.J. Tucker, Murphy's Midnight Rounders, and many, many more. Join us for exciting shows like Ask a Witch and Storytime with Rook as well. www.internationalpaganradio.com on the net or on TuneIn Radio on your mobile devices. Join us on Facebook and Twitter too. International Pagan Radio, all pagan, all the time.
Welcome back to An Emerging Forest on the Spiritual Unity Radio Network. We hope everyone was able to stretch their legs and get a drink. And now, back to Alan.
Well, hello everyone, and I'll bring my guests back onto the live stream. And we'd like to encourage anyone out there who's an aspiring artist who's listened to the first half hour and say, hey, I'm struggling to get this do this step or do that step or market myself. Or as you can see, Wendy had sort of a start and some missing pieces that she couldn't self-supply or work coming from someplace else. And that's life. That's where you're supposed to be. Be kind to yourself. That's literally, you're supposed to have this other adventure. You've got this obstacle before this other part of your garden blooms, so that's what's going on. But if anybody would like to talk to us, all three of us, to talk to Wendy, the number to call in is 646-564-9714. And I encourage you to call in. We encourage everybody to explore their passion, to have this, this next little conversation with somebody who's doing it, and to just move on with things. But as we were talking about on the early side of the break, before we went into the break, there's an interesting tool that Wendy uses to focus and to be more clear-minded. And she started talking about what TM, or Transcendental Meditation, does for her. And why don't you pick up with that and explain a little bit about how that helps you?
Well, TM is a mantra-based meditation. So basically, the practice is you're given a mantra and you just repeat it for a limited amount of time. So they encourage you to do 20 minutes twice a day. I find that I can't fit it in the second time. I'm happy if I get my 20 minutes in the morning. The afternoon is just too hard right now. And that's basically it. In the beginning when you're learning, you go to these meetings the first week or so and you talk to other meditators. And it's funny, certain things I didn't realize. When I went to one of the group meetings, one guy mentioned how he's sleeping better. And I was like, oh, yeah, me too, actually. Someone else said their blood pressure went down and they were able to get off blood pressure medication from regularly practicing. So I do feel like that it does help me stay calm. I don't know if it's affected my work content-wise, but I do try to be mindful and be present when I'm painting. And sometimes when I'm a little frustrated or getting stuck with something, I try to come back and think, okay, how does it feel? What am I doing right now? How does the brush feel against the canvas? I just try to be really aware and be really present. And I listen to a lot of podcasts on mastery. Like, that's been my thing right now. I like to have them on when I'm listening or when I'm painting. And I've had different art podcasts on, or interviews with artists I'll listen to. But I also like to listen to ones on mastery. I'll always share with my friends if I've come across a really good one. But
any specific classics you want to point to on the show?
Well, there's one I've been listening to a lot right now called Finding Mastery. And they're not interviews with artists. It's usually a lot of athletes. But I find that the message is all the same. The lessons. Mm-hmm. It could be someone who's an expert in their field in computers or in business or an athlete. But it's all the same. It's all the same message. And a lot of what they use is presence, being present in what they're doing. And I just think that's really important, especially when you're trying to paint somebody. When you're in a room and you have a model that's giving their time, and granted, a lot of times they're paid, but they're still, it's a moment in time that you're with them in this space. And, I do look at the person and I think, what is it about them? What is the essence? And I try to keep that in mind when I'm painting, especially a portrait. So, yeah.
So do you have anything that you want to talk about as far as that goes, David?
Well, I think that what I was curious about was what does what's your creative process like? I always feel it's interesting to find out more about individuals' creative process and how it goes from idea to, or inspiration to idea to the work and then the finished piece. Maybe you could walk us through that a bit.
Okay. So actually I've been I've been thinking about that now. I do, like I said, I like doing portraits, but I'm trying to think of how to make it more than, say, just a head on a rectangle. So how can I push it to show more of the essence of the person? With still life, I find it's a little easier for me to be thoughtful because of the objects that I choose. You know, I like to have a personal connection to them. A lot of times it'll be something that just draws me, and I'll think, how can I use this? But I've noticed that even when I think it's somewhat random, it really isn't. For instance, I have this one still life on my website that, you know, looks like a little simple still life probably to an outsider. But, you know, I called it gratitude because it kind of summed up my time at Incaminati and the path that I had there. I had one object that represents someone, and it's glass, and it's transparent, and I feel like this person will tell me like it is. You know, I know where I stand. I have another object in there that was a gift from a friend, and, you know, it's shiny, and it's metal like armor, and then I have another object in there that's a little thank you note. I was model coordinator for a year at Incaminati, where I scheduled all the models for the classes. And this one model came to town, and he was only in town a few months. He was well recommended, and he was terrific, and I booked him as much as I could, but I didn't use him a lot just because of the time constraints. And before he moved on, one day I walked into my studio, and there was a flower with a ribbon around it in a vase and a little thank you note, and a little handmade note that he had left for me. And I just thought that was really sweet and thoughtful that, you know, someone took time out of their day to leave this little note, you know, thank you for hiring me. And so I have that in the painting as well. And then in the background I have it's one of my scarves. So I felt like this painting shows something that I would, you know, that's close to me, the scarf, it's wrapped around you. I have it wrapped around these objects, which represent people that helped me along my path while I was there. So when I do a still life, I do try to make it a little more personal. Hello? Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Listening. Okay. I'm with you. So anyway, that's just my thought process when I try to do still life. I do try to make it have some kind of meaning to me. It may not mean anything to the viewer, but at least for me, I know that it has a personal connection.
Tell us about some of the pieces you've done and some of your more favorite works, and maybe what are some of your early. What was your first artwork, or what was your first drawing? How old were you?
Gosh, I don't even know. I mean, you know, as a kid, everybody likes to draw, right? You like doing it when it's fun, and you just do it for the sake of doing it. I did have the privilege, which I didn't recognize this at the time, but right before I started at Moore, I took private lessons with an artist. He was an older man in his 70s, I believe, at the time. And he would just have me come to his studio, and I would draw in charcoal, and I'd bring a model. Again, usually it was, you know, a family member. I have a portrait I did of my dad and my mom and my grandmother at the time. And I still have those drawings, and I've had my parents pose for me again since then. But it's really nice to have that memory and that drawing I did way back and compare it to the how I see them now. Most of my work now.
That was an interesting art show.
Yeah. Oh, I have put it up on Instagram. You know, Father's Day, of course. I had to put the old dad and the new one. You know.
Yeah, but a show of artists with their earliest piece and their most recent piece, like side by side.
Yeah, like real early, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So most of my work is oil paintings. I did start with this medium called red chalk. About maybe last spring I started using it, and I really enjoy drawing with that, and that's something that I want to explore using more. But mainly now I would say it's mostly the oil painting is what I spend my time on.
What draws you to oil painting over, like, say, acrylic? Because oil, of course, isn't the easiest to work with, correct? I mean,
I actually find it easier.
Right? Oh,
yeah,
great.
It's easier for me than acrylic. I mean, it doesn't dry right away, so you get these. You can build things up, and you have this luminosity from the layers. But yeah, and then there's something about, I guess, old school, something about the smell and the feel, But yeah, acrylics always feel kind of plasticky to me. But maybe it's just because, I don't know, that's what I'm used to using.
What are some artists that you really admired, or that you looked up to, or were influences on you at different times in your life?
Oh gosh, there's a ton. I will say I remember one instance. You know how you see artwork in photos, and you're like, oh, okay, here's a painting. I had a chance to see a painting called Las Meninas by Velázquez in person. It's in Spain, and it's a huge painting. It's like, I don't know, size of a wall. I don't know, 86 by. It's a huge painting, and I had seen pictures of it, and I had learned about it. But that time when I got to walk into the Prado and see this painting on the wall, it just took my breath away. It was one time that I have a strong memory of seeing this thing in person, and it's just beautiful. I mean, it just glows, and it's something that you just don't get across in a photograph. So Velázquez is one that I've really been inspired by, but there's a ton. I have some stuff hanging in my studio. I have like my little inspiration wall, and I have some Nelson Shanks paintings. I have Guido Cagnacci. There's a female painter I came across that I can't find a lot of information on, Juana Romani. I have her hanging up. And I also like some contemporary people, too. You know how it is. You know, you go through different phases and you come across different things. Frida Kahlo has always been a painter that I've admired. Not mostly because I find her very brave, you know, for her to put her life out there. And it's just hard to do. It's one thing when you're painting it alone in your studio, but it's another thing when you're putting it on a wall for someone else to look at and form an opinion about.
Is it different for female artists, or is that kind of not true? I mean, as a female artist, what is it? What are some of the differences that you've seen as far as how people approach your art, or any at all? Maybe there is none.
I don't know. I can't say I've had a lot of experience with that. Of course, Moore's an all-girls school or all-women's school, so there was a lot of emphasis on women artists and, you know, learning about them and finding your own voice, which you would do at any school. But I don't know. I don't know if I guess I try not to think about that kind of stuff. I think there's a seat at the table for everyone. You know, I think my point of view is just as valid as anybody else's. And that's something that took a while to understand. You know, I think maybe years ago I might have thought, I don't know, why me? Why would someone be interested in my work? And now I think, why not me? Why not? You know, why not me over anyone else? There's plenty of artists out there that are making work and selling it. And, you know, again, it's going back to that whole stories we tell ourselves and beliefs that we put on ourselves. I just don't buy into that anymore. I, you know, want to just keep on doing my thing and just keep painting, and I'll see where it leads me.
Beautiful way to look at it.
Yeah, in the end, we do it for ourselves. So, yeah.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. So.
We are famously alone doing it for ourselves, and the reflections we see back we call other people.
Yeah. And I have to say, I've noticed, I mean, when you're painting someone's portrait, you're still painting yourself. Like there's some of you in it, and you can tell when you see artists' work. Like you can see a pattern. You can see someone in their portraits. it's really interesting. I know I see it in mine. Sometimes I'll be like, oh, I'm painting myself again. But
so, what do you look for in a model? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Alan.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. No, Doug, your question first.
I was just wondering what you look for in a model when you choose models for your art.
I think there is beauty in everyone, and it's up to me as the artist to find it and to show it. So, I mean, of course, there's some people that you're drawn to more than others. Maybe it's their character, or maybe it's their essence, or you've had a conversation, and you're like, wow. I mean, when you paint people, you look at everybody as a potential subject. So, I could be at a store buying something, and I'll be checking out the girl waiting on me and thinking, God, she'd make a great painting. I mean, everybody has their own story. People are just so interesting if you take the time to talk to them and ask and find out. And even if you don't talk to them, being in their company and being in their space and getting a sense of the energy, that's the stuff I like about painting a portrait. And that's what I think about when I'm painting someone. Of course I want to get the technical part right. I want it to look like them, and I want the shapes to be right, and, I want it to look solid. But in the end, it's the feeling. I want you to feel something when you look at my work. I love a painting that has a tactile quality where I just really have this urge to touch it. Of course you can't, but that's the kind of thing that I aim for is, when you look at something, and if I feel like I've done it well, that you do feel something from it when you look at it.
So we have a few minutes left, and I'd like you to describe, you are obviously a professional artist, and you obviously offer a portrait service. That's correct, right?
Yes.
So describe for me and the listeners what the process is. Just basically take us through your commercial chain of assembly, or whatever you want to call it. It's art, but there's a business process. I mean, somebody contacts you. How do they contact you? I mean, where would a listener? So a listener is like, oh my goodness, there's somebody who I'm interested in. I'm interested in Wendy Wagner. Where do I go to see your work to say, okay, I'm going to take the next step? And so take us through the next steps of what would be involved in getting something from you.
Informally, informally, I'm on Instagram, Wendy Wagner Art, but I also have a website, wendywagnerart.com. And there is a contact me section on there. And basically, if someone's interested, if they're interested in something on the website, they can contact me or email me. I have a contract that I send out and, pretty much describes the terms. I had done a couple interior commissions, and somebody had seen a painting that I had done and asked me to do a similar version with a little customization, which I did. And, I just basically send out the contract, and we agree on the terms, and that's how we get the ball rolling. It's pretty easy.
So basically someone's going to show up and sit, right? What
yes.
is that process? What happens?
Yeah.
So you're talking.
That,
I mean, do you have an interview? I mean, does the interview lasts an hour and then you sit? I mean, so let's demystify this process.
Yeah. So, of course they'd see my work to see what kind of stuff I do and if it's a good fit. But basically, I like to paint from life. So if someone were to sit, how it works in my studio and, of course, in a classroom setting as well is they are timed. So they sit for 20 minutes while I paint, and then they get a break, and then they sit for 20 again. And the process goes on for as long as we need. And Alaprima is just done at one shot. So it could either be a 3 or 6 hour thing, and it's done that day, and that's it. Longer-term portraits, of course, will require more sittings. And usually I tell people if they are going to pose, or if it's a model that I'm particularly interested in, or someone who's not a professional model, but I really want to paint them, I usually ask if they can meditate, because I know if they can kind of sit in silence, they'll be a great model. But, some people talk more and move around, and that's fine too. I work it out. It's nice to talk to people and kind of get an essence and get their personality. That's the fun part. That's the part that I hope it's I can capture.
Yeah, it's good. It's good for me as a quote unquote possible customer to see what I'm getting into. So it's
yes.
sitting 20 minutes on, 20 minutes off for 3 or possibly 6 hours, and having some conversation. Go ahead.
Oh, it's 20 minutes on and like a 5-minute break. They only get a little break, but yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So 20 minutes on and then a short break.
Yes.
Do you have anything that needs to be taken care of break? And then 20 minutes back on. So basically, you'd be sitting for 40 some odd minutes out of the hour, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, I mean, I have to ask and make all these mistakes because now I understand better about what the process is, and folks who are interested in the process and interested in the product have much less. Well, what am I getting into, and what kind of an investment is it? And then all of a sudden they find out they're going to be sitting in a pose for 50 minutes out of the hour, and they're like, well, I can't do that. Well, now they know what your process is, and that's really great. So basically, it's Wendy Wagner Art on Instagram. WendyWagnerArt.com is your website, and there's contact information, and I think that's really your story, but it's really interesting, and it's so fun to have this show, because the show is about an emerging forest, and the show is about fertility, and the show's themes are you can do it, you can follow your passion, just get out there and overcome that internal, no, you can't do it, you're not good enough voice. And it's so interesting to have another person on there and to have the sort of the anatomy of psychology once again laid bare for all to see, that we're all the same and we're all doing the same thing, and we're all, I was in a bad phase and I couldn't overcome the negative sayer. You'll overcome the negative sayer when it's time to walk through the door. So pointing fingers at yourself and saying, I wasn't good enough at that point, there's a really interesting word I like everybody to substitute for the times when it didn't work, and that's called, it's all training, or even especially in meditation and yoga, it's called a practice. And so the whole, you never get to the end of your journey. It's always practice. You're always going through these doors. And if we're super, super kind to ourselves and to others, to everyone else we meet, and we say to ourselves, we're always going through doors. We're always terrified of doing new things. Sometimes we go back in the old familiar room and sit in our easy chair, but there's people who are outside of the room where we have easy chairs who look at us in our easy chairs and say, I could never do that. And we have to realize that we're trying to go into rooms that they're in, that they're quote unquote, familiar with. They're not masters because there are none. There's people who are just more familiar with various rooms. So
yeah,
I really appreciate you coming on the show. It's really great to hear your journey and what you do, and I hope our listeners are seeing all the themes here and seeing that we're all the same. And hey, folks, your passion is just waiting there. And even if you're saying no about it, you're in training to go through the door and actually be doing it. Sometime, maybe not this lifetime, but maybe when things come around again, you'll be out there doing your passion. So
yeah, I think it's
go ahead.
I think it's important to move outside your comfort zone. You got to push yourself there because that's where you grow. It really is.
It's about living at your edge.
Yeah, amidst being terrified, one of my teachers here on this show basically says you have to train yourself to hold living in fear as the detector of when you're in the right place.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
And it's like, Wendy, you looked at me when I offered to come on the show, and you said, that really scares me. It's something I should do.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And I actually met Barbara Shelley yesterday at her opening of the Times, and I said to her, well, I know that when my offer seems a little scary or seems a little uncomfortable, but look around the room. You're in the communication business, and here's another skill that's in the communication business. So isn't that right up your alley? So thank you very much for taking the time and for putting yourself on your edge and coming out and talking to us for a little over an hour. And you're welcome to come back and contact me at any time. Just say, hey, I'm having a show here or doing this, and I'll give you a little shout out on the program that I'm doing. Or if you want to come back at any point, let me know what you need. And I want to support the people that want to be supported by this program, and to help everybody explore their passions and get better skilled. Because as you know, it's not rocket science. You get to the second story by building the first story, and you get to the third story by building the second story. So that's what we're about.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for having me on. It was really a pleasure to talk to you.
All right. So, David, would you give your contact information out?
Yeah, it's dwitman0906@gmail.com. And thank you so much for coming on the show, Wendy. It's been great talking to you and finding out more about you as well as your art. And thank you to everyone, of course, that's been listening to the show. And don't be afraid to call in.
Well, thank you, David, and thanks, Alan.
Thanks. Have a good night, and talk to you soon.
Okay, take care.
All right. So, thanks, David, for being on again, and
thank you, Alan.
I'll certainly be talking to you soon. Thanks, everybody out there, because once again, I'm Alan Ritter. I'm the host of the show, and I run a small produce business in the southeastern Pennsylvania and southern New Jersey area called the Produce Club. And I basically get organic produce at a really great price and pass it along to folks in this area. So if you're interested, or if you're interested in being on this radio program, or if you're just interested in chatting with me, my email is ritter_alan88@gmail.com. Thanks so much for talking. Please explore your passions. Please get out there and open doors and sit on the fence, but ride your fear and know you're in the right place. So have a great week, everyone. Have a great Thanksgiving, and talk to you next week.
All right, thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Spiritual Unity Radio Network. Join us 7 nights a week for exciting programming covering a variety of expressions of faith. And remember, all manifestations of the divine are equally valid.